Hey everyone, are you tired of hand watering your flower garden nearly every day, especially during these really hot summer days? Well, I am. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I install drip irrigation to my garden area. My name is Lula and I live in zone 8. So this is the area here that I'm going to be putting the drip irrigation in. It's just a straight, narrow rectangular area. It comes all the way down to the end of my fence here. And what I want to do is eventually put some mulch or something down. That's why I put the cardboard down to aerate the soil, which I find it cardboard really does a good job as far as softening up soil that is really hard to dig into, and it draws in those worms that are really good for providing nutrients in the soil with the worm castings, as well as digging in and tunneling down under that cardboard to soften up that soil and make it easier for your plants to grow. So what exactly is drip irrigation? Well, drip irrigation is when you are going to place a plastic tubing. It's going to have emitters on it. You're going to place this tubing right next to your plant. It's going to be at soil level, and it's going to slowly drip water to the roots of your plant. Now, some of the advantages of using drip irrigation is that number one, is a super easy way to slowly water your plants at the root level where water is needed the most. Now, I find that I have wasted a lot of water by applying it to areas where it was not needed. And number two, your plants will thrive because they are receiving a consistent, targeted supply of water. And then number three, it halts diseases and mildews that can occur when your stems, your leaves, or your fruit get wet. So now I'm going to show you some of the supplies that I am going to be using for today's project. Right here is my 1/2 inch irrigation supply line tubing, or sometimes it's referred to as a distribution tubing, but this is going to be used as my main supply line for my emitters and other irrigation parts. Now this is a 1/4 inch distribution tubing or irrigation supply line. It's blank, it's very flexible. This is a 100-foot row. Now this is also distribution tubing, it's just brown in color. It's just like the black one that I just showed you. This one is also a 1/4 inch in diameter, but it differs from the black one because it has emitters embedded in it about every 6 inches apart. And when I say emitters, I mean it has holes in it that allows water to drip out. This water is going to drip out at about 0.8 gallons per hour. Now I included this elbow barb fitting, but I realize I'm really not going to use it today. It's called an elbow because it can join two ends of your 1/2 inch main supply line. It can extend it and take it in a different direction. Now I love this emitter. It's called a spot watering emitter. It can deliver 2 gallons of water an hour. I am also going to be using a barb connector. It's used with my 1/4 inch tubing, and it can join my emitters tubing that's got emitters already embedded in it. It can connect that with my mainline tubing. Now this is a tubing enclosure that I am going to use. When I reach the end of my row, I don't want the water to continue to pour out, so I am going to clamp it off to stop the water from flowing, and this is what the tubing enclosure is for. I am also going to use a hole punch to put a hole in my mainline tubing and landscape fabric staples, and that helps me to hold down my irrigation tubing. So this is a drip irrigation faucet adapter. It has 4 different parts to it. The first part is right here, and this is your backflow preventer. It's going to prevent water from backflowing into your main water supply. It has a mesh filter here, pardon the soil on it because I just disconnected it from my drip irrigation so that I could show it to you. But this is going to catch debris, and you can take this out to rinse it and clean it. And then you have your 25 psi, which is a pressure regulator. Now this is going to reduce the water pressure from a high pressure to a lower pressure. This is very important because if your system if you don't have this regulator, your water pressure could be so strong that it causes your system to blow out, meaning that your tubings and stuff, all your connections will just pop loose and you'll have water just going everywhere. So you need this regulator in order to reduce that water pressure. Now this is the adapter that slides up and down, and this is the part where your main supply line is going to go. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to roll out my supply line, and this was the supply line. This was that 1/2 inch tubing distribution supply line. So I'm going to roll it from one end of my flower bed to the other end of the flower bed. This is it right here, the end clamp. So you're going to put one piece in that side, and then you're going to fold it over like so and put the other end in there, and then just make sure it's pretty tight. And this is going to keep the water from coming out the other end. And there it is right there. So I had to stop filming because we had a rain shower. Now the rain is all gone. The sun is trying to come out, and it's still looking a little cloudy, like we might get some more rain, but I am determined that I am going to finish laying this drip irrigation in this flower garden. Now the hard part is already done because I laid the main line tubing down already, and that was so tricky because you will see in the video that I have some plants that are in containers and some plants that are in the ground. And the reason for that is that I have really crummy soil in this flower garden. So some things I can plant in the ground and they do just fine, and other things I plant in the ground and they just die out. They just do not survive. So instead of dealing with that, I just put things in containers, and that's been working well for me. Now you'll see in some areas, you'll see me use that brown tubing that's got emitters already embedded in the tubing. You'll see that me putting that around my flower containers, and then you'll see me using a single emitter for those plants that are growing in the ground. And really you can do it any way you want. You don't have to do it that way. That's just my personal preference. Now the fun part for me when it comes to installing drip irrigation is that second part, when you get ready to tap into that main line tubing to get that water going to your plants. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to start out installing it in my peach tree, which is in a container, and I'm going to use the brown tubing with the emitters in there. So come on, I'm going to show you that part, get that done, and then I'll just go around and install drip irrigation for all the other plants that you see. So this is my peach tree. As you can see, I do have peaches growing here. Okay, some of the things that I'm going to be using is I am going to need a barb, and that's this right here. And the barbs are used to connect things. As you can see, you got one end that you can connect to something and another end. So when I put my peach tree in this container, I went ahead and threaded it all the way from the bottom of the container where there's a hole to the top up here. That way all I had to do was hook it up. So I'm just going to connect it like this, and it just goes in, not really hard. Might have to have a little force to it, but not much. And this is all that's needed to connect this together like that. And I have another end here, let me show you. Now this end here if I don't put something on this end, the water is just going to come out the end. So I have to have an end piece to stop the water because I want it to come out the emitters. So I have something called an end piece, and that's this little thing here. And it does what it says. It's an end piece that goes into the end of this, and it's going to stop the water from coming out and allow the water to come out of the emitters. It's not that hard to get in. Stick it in there. I think that's it, and that's all there is to it. Now let me show you the other thing. Once you get all this hooked up, you want to hook the bottom line to your drip line, to your main line, I should say. So this is the line that's coming from the container, and it's not hooked up to anything, but I want to hook it up to my main line, which is right here. So I'm going to need my hole punch, and I'm going to need another barb because the barb is going to go into this. But let me show you how I'm going to connect the barb to the line. It's basically the same as it was a little while ago. I'm going to take this line here, and I am going to hook it up just like that. Then I'm going to take my hole punch because I need to put a hole right here to connect this to here. So the thing I had to learn when I was doing this is don't push this too hard, because what I did was I pushed it so hard that I put a hole in the bottom of that too, and then it was useless to me because the water was coming out. So you want to make sure that when you put the hole in there, you don't go too deep and put a hole in the other end. And that's all there is to that. Now I went through this garden area and I hooked up some of the emitters already. And this is what I mean when I say an emitter. And that's this right here. So this is just going to go right there. I'm just going to leave it there and let the water slowly drip to that area of my Play in the Blues salvia. The other end here, I'm going to do the same thing. I am going to put a barb there where that emitter is to this one here. Just going to put it in there like that. Then I'm going to put a hole right here with my hole punch. Okay. And there, hook this up. And that's it. So now my water is going to go from here, from the main line here, to my drip there. So I have the system hooked up, but the first thing I want to do is to go through and make sure that all the plants are receiving water. Got water around this plant here. You can see the water dripping there. Yeah. I did put irrigation in here. I had strawberries in here that I started from seed, and I put some thyme in here. So decided to run drip to that one as well, and that's going. Let me check in this plant here. This is a big one. Now this was one that I added after I had the plants already planted in here. It's really better if you can add your irrigation before you get your plants planted in there. And this one is watering just fine. Let's go down the line. So you got your system all hooked up, your irrigation system. Now you want to connect it to your timer. Some people do this first. I do it last. You will need something like this. This one has 2 zones. Let me show you. 2 zones, and that means that if you have, say like I have irrigation for my garden, flower garden here. I also have irrigation in my raised garden beds. So all the irrigation in my raised garden beds is on one zone, so I will hook it up to here. So this is one zone, and then my flower garden is hooked up to another zone, so that's the second zone, so I will hook it up to here. That way, whenever I wanted to water my flower garden or my raised garden beds, I won't be watering them on the same line. I might decide I don't want to water my flower garden today, but I do want to water my garden, so I will have it set on a timer where it would just water my flower garden. I may want to water both of them, so I can have the timer set that both of them can get watered. But that's what this is, and it's 2 zones. You can tell because it's got 2 areas to hook up 2 zones. And then the next thing is this here is for your spigot. So whenever you get ready to hook it up, you want to take and attach this part to your water spigot, and then follow the directions on your timer as far as setting your timer up. Now there's 2 ways that you can hook your irrigation system up to this. Once you get this hooked up to your spigot, you can take this other 2 that I showed you earlier. So what you would do is screw this right up to here like this, and then you're going to take your tubing that I showed you and you are going to connect it to here. And this is your main line tubing that's going to your garden, and you are just going to put it up here like this to connect it. Let's see, it's going to take 2 hands to do this. So I didn't put it up there really tight, but I just wanted you to get the idea of how to hook it up. So this is going to go to your spigot. You got your filter up there, and then you got your main tubing that's going to your garden area that you just installed. And then you just follow the directions that came with your timer and go from there. So a second way, just leave this setup just the way it is. You got your main line tubing here, you got your filter and your pressure regulator connected to your water hose, and then your water hose is going to be connected to your spigot. And that's the setup. Now if you want a second zone, you're going to have to repeat this process right here. You got to have a filter, you got to have another water hose, and you got to connect that to your spigot. Once you get your timer set up, you got all your drip irrigation installed, you are good to go. You do not have to stand out in the hot heat anymore to water your flower garden. Now before I go, I want to talk a little bit about some tips that I have learned from drip irrigation. Number 1, you want to go out and check your system. You want to do it on a regular basis, maybe twice a month, maybe more. It's all up to you. And the reason you want to check your system is you want to make sure that your system is working properly and that you don't have any clogged emitters. You're thinking that your plant is getting water and it's really not, because the emitters are clogged or something is just not working properly. So you want to check it to make sure that all the water is flowing to where it needs to be. Another reason you want to check it is because you want to make sure that your plants are getting the proper amount of water. You might be watering it and your plants may not be getting enough water, and that could be that you may not be running your timer long enough. So if you do a check after you finish watering your garden, do a soil check. Stick your finger down in the soil somewhere near close to the plant, and I say about 6 inches, just to make sure that the soil is wet enough. You know, this area looks really unfinished right now because it really is, but I'm going to come back. I'm going to bring you along with me, add some mulch to it, some more plants, and get it to looking much better. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and that I was able to help you to see just how easy it is to install your own drip irrigation in your garden, whether it be your flower garden or your vegetable garden. But please let me know in the comment section below if you are going to try to install drip irrigation in your flower bed, your garden, and let me know how it turned out. So until I see you again, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.